Last December, I moved to a quiet suburb. I was 32 years old and thought a fresh start would help me find both peace and inspiration. It was a nice neighborhood, and I expected friendly neighbors. But even with this change, I often felt isolated. One evening, I went grocery shopping. The store was quiet and comforting. I didn't think much of it. I got home, unpacked my bags, and relaxed. But as I settled in, I heard something strange coming from the wall shared with my neighbor. Soft whispers drifted through the thin drywall. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination. But as I listened, the whispers grew louder. They were rhythmic and unsettling. My heart raced as I considered knocking on her door to check if everything was okay. I hesitated. That night, I went to bed, hoping the next day would be better. But the whispers continued. They crept into my thoughts every morning and night. My neighbor seemed odd too. I'd see her outside at strange hours, standing in her yard, staring blankly into the night. I felt uneasy whenever I caught a glimpse of her. I wanted to ask if she was all right, but something held me back. Then I started finding weird items on my porch. One day, it was an old, dusty doll. The next was a box filled with dirt and nothing else. It felt like I was living in a horror movie. I didn't know how to react. Why were these things left for me? Did my neighbor know about them? I couldn't figure it out. One night, I was up late, working on a design project. I was alone in the house when I suddenly heard laughter. It sounded like children playing. I looked outside, but there were no kids anywhere. Just darkness and silence. A chill ran down my spine. I felt trapped and confused. I wondered if I was losing my mind, or if my neighbor was in trouble. Then, I decided to confront my feelings. I needed answers. Taking a deep breath, I stepped outside and called out to her. She was standing there, staring at me without blinking. I tried to ask if she needed help. All she did was smile, and as she did, I heard the whispers again, faint but clear, calling my name. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't know what to do. It was as if the whispers had taken hold of my thoughts. Had I imagined them all along? Or was my neighbor truly trapped in some horror that I couldn't see? The strange occurrences kept getting worse, making me feel more isolated. Each detail blurred the line between my mind and reality. From that moment, I was never quite the same. I kept hoping to find the answers. But I found myself spiraling deeper into a mystery that would not let go. Now I still don't know what was real and what wasn't. Sometimes, in the quiet of my house, I can almost hear the whispers again. The next day, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I had to get to the bottom of what was happening. I decided to pay a visit to the local library. I hoped to find some information about my neighbor or the odd occurrences in the neighborhood. The library was peaceful, and it provided a much-needed escape from my chaotic thoughts. I scoured the local archives. Old newspaper clippings told stories of past tragedies and strange happenings. A few articles mentioned disappearances in the area, all unsolved. My heart raced as I read about them. The last one was particularly haunting. It talked about a woman who had vanished without a trace. They found her home in disarray, with no clues. My mind went back to my neighbor. Something made me uneasy to leave her alone. I had seen her with the doll on my porch. Did it belong to the woman from the newspaper? Suddenly, an old librarian approached me. She had kind eyes but a serious expression. "Are you looking for something?" she asked gently. I explained my concerns about my neighbor. I told her about the whispers, the items on my porch, everything. She listened intently and then furrowed her brow. "I think you should be careful," she said softly. "People sometimes don't want to be found. Sometimes they hide their troubles deep. Just be aware." Her words echoed in my mind. As I left the library, I felt heavier. I needed a plan. I decided to reach out to my neighbors. I knocked on a few doors. Most were friendly but unaware of anything unusual. One man, however, had a different take. "Stay away from that woman," he warned. "She has been odd for years. People say she brought bad luck." You catch her gaze too long, and you might not come back from it. His words sent a shiver down my spine. I hadn't wanted to believe the neighborhood could hold such darkness. I felt dread pooling in my stomach. That night, I decided to confront my neighbor again. I stepped outside, but this time I made sure the porch light was on. It was comforting, I thought. I moved closer to her yard, feeling the weight of her presence. I called out softly, "I just want to help." She appeared as if from nowhere, standing under a tree. The whispers returned, louder this time. I felt an overwhelming urge to turn back, but I stood firm. Suddenly, I noticed something shining next to her foot. It was the doll I had found on my porch, but it looked different, more worn and decayed. Before I could say anything, she reached down and picked it up, cradling it in her arms like a child. "Do you want to play?" she asked, her voice sweet but chilling. I froze. The whispers began to call my name again, louder and more insistent. I wanted to run. But as I turned, the whispers transformed into a cacophony of voices, pulling at the edges of my sanity. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape. Just then, something caught my eye behind her. A shadow, too swift, slithered between the trees. My heart stopped. It felt like I might not be alone anymore. What had I stumbled into? Questions raced through my mind. I bolted back toward my home, barely able to breathe. I slammed the door behind me, locking it tight. But I knew deep down, this wasn't over. What was my neighbor hiding? And who, or what, was moving in the shadows? That night, sleep was elusive. I lay in bed, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood, distant cars, the rustle of leaves, and an occasional bark from a dog. But one sound stood out. Whispers rolled in like an unwelcome tide, seeping through the cracks of my mind. Every now and then, I could almost make out words, familiar yet unsettling. I pulled the blankets tighter around me, trying to block them out. As dawn broke, I felt a fragility within. I wondered how to uncover the truth without crossing too many lines. I had to stay cautious. My neighbor seemed to carry a dark weight, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to share that burden. I decided to go back to the library. This time, I needed to gather everything I could, names, stories, anything that linked my neighbor to the whispers. I stepped inside, relief washing over me like a cool breeze. The familiarity of silence was reassuring, but it only heightened my anxiety regarding what I might unearth. I went straight to the section on local history. After an hour of sifting through dusty books, I stumbled upon a worn-out journal. It had been tucked away, somewhat hidden, and the spine was fragile. My heart raced with hope and fear as I opened it. The pages chronicled life in the neighborhood decades ago. Names danced across the pages, and I scanned them until I saw a name that made my throat dry: Edith Montgomery. According to the journal, Edith had been a part of the very community I lived in, known for her kindness but also whispered about for her strange habits. She had owned a doll collection, one that had an unsettling reputation. The journal hinted that children in the neighborhood claimed they heard whispers when they played near her home. Some even spoke of disappearing shadows. I turned the page. A chill gripped me as I read. It's as if the toys speak to her. And when she smiles, you can feel the darkness around her. It's waiting. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Was my neighbor connected to her in some way? Just then, the library door creaked open. I glanced up and saw the old librarian from yesterday. She approached me with a knowing look. "I see you've found the Montgomery Journal," she said softly, her voice low. "You're uncovering something not all should know about. You might wish to heed the warnings." Her words felt like a fresh wave of dread. I thought about the shadow I had seen, the whispers I had heard. I wanted to ask her more, but fear stilled my voice. Instead, I grabbed the journal tightly, as if it might shield me from whatever was lurking in the shadows. As I left the library, there was something new in the air. A sense of urgency rattled my bones. The whispers, I realized, weren't just in my head, they were out there, chasing the remnants of Edith Montgomery. Returning home, the sun was setting. I hesitated outside my door, uneasy. Should I confront my neighbor again? The thought of seeing her made my heart race, but I had to know more. I steeled myself and walked toward her house. The yard was quiet, but a presence lingered around her porch. As I stepped closer, I took a deep breath. When I saw it, the front door was slightly ajar, swaying in the wind. A chill washed over me. Someone was inside. I stood frozen at the edge of her driveway, the air thick with tension. My first instinct was to turn and run, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something important lay just beyond that door. So, with my heart pounding in my ears, I took a tentative step forward. The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open. The interior was dark, shadows weaving through the space like old friends. I called out, "Hello?" My voice sounded small and lost in the silence. There was no response, just a heavy stillness wrapping around me. I took another step inside, careful not to disturb anything. The faint scent of something sweet and floral hung in the air. It reminded me of the old doll shops I used to visit as a child. My eyes traveled across the dimly lit living room, and I spotted the unmistakable shapes of dolls lining shelves. Their glassy stares felt eerie, and suddenly, I remembered the journal's words. As I stepped further in, the whispers brushed against my ears again. This time, they felt urgent, as if they were trying to tell me something. I squinted into the dimness, searching for the source. "Is anyone here?" I repeated, hoping to break the spell of quiet that gripped the room. Suddenly, the whispers coalesced into something more, a soft giggle that echoed from the back of the house. My stomach twisted. Adventure seekers like me were usually cautious, but curiosity propelled me forward. The sound was innocent, yet it felt so wrong here among the dolls. I made my way down a narrow hallway, glancing at frames hanging crookedly on the walls. Pictures of people I didn't recognize smiled back at me, but the moment I met their eyes, I felt a jolt of discomfort. They looked oddly alive, as if they wanted to say something. Reaching the end of the hallway brought me to an open door slightly ajar. I could see a glimmer of light and the vague outline of a room. What was waiting inside? I hesitated, my hand hovering over the door frame. Then I pushed it open gently. The light spilled out into the hallway, revealing a workshop filled with unfinished dolls. Fabrics and threads were strewn about, and the centerpiece was a tall wooden stand displaying a single doll dressed in an exquisite vintage gown. Her porcelain face was painted with an unsettling tranquility. That doll wasn't just another toy. She looked eerily similar to the photos I had seen earlier. As I stepped closer, the whispers grew louder, mixing with that persistent giggle. It felt as if the dolls were alive, inviting me to join them in their game. And then, my gaze caught something on the table next to the doll, a small notebook lying open. My heart sank as I opened it, the familiar scrawl of Edith Montgomery filling the pages. Notes about each doll's creation, each character infused with her own thoughts and feelings. But the last entry made my breath hitch. Her eyes will capture them. They want to come back. I looked up just in time to see a shadow flit across the doorway behind me. The giggle transformed into a cacophony of voices, each whispering my name. Panic surged through me. I spun around, the door slamming shut as if on cue. Someone was in the house. The air shifted, heavy with a feeling I couldn't shake. I pressed my back against the table, searching for any way out. My breath quickened, and I felt trapped, like a deer in headlights. The whispers intensified, weaving through the darkness with intent. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence followed. Then I heard its soft footsteps, deliberate and slow. They approached from behind the door, my heart thundering in time with each step. I considered my options. The window? It was too high. The hallway offered retreat, but I wasn't sure what was waiting for me there. I opted to stay put, hoping whoever or whatever was behind that door lingered just out of sight. "Please, just show yourself," I said, gaining a shred of courage. But the footsteps paused, and the giggling faded to a hush, replaced by the sound of fabric rustling. The dolls watched me, their porcelain expressions unchanging but somehow more sinister now. In that unsettling silence, I spotted a glimmer near the doll on the stand. A metal latch hidden beneath the ruffled fabric of her gown. What was it? My heart raced as I crept closer, every instinct telling me to turn back. But I couldn't. Not now. I had to know more. I hesitated only a moment longer before lifting the hem of the doll's dress. My fingers brushed against the latch, cold and out of place. What if it was a key to something? Should I dare? Just then, the door burst open, and light flooded the room. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, casting a long shadow across the floor. For a brief moment, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but the shape sharpened, revealing a young girl with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice low and cautionary. There was a strange intensity in her gaze, as if she could see through me. "I was just looking for someone," I stammered, shoving the notebook behind my back in a panic. The last thing I wanted was to show her Edith's entries. "Looking for someone?" she echoed, stepping inside. "You shouldn't be in here. They don't like it when strangers look." Her eyes flitted to the dolls, and for a moment, I sensed more than fear. It was a warning. "I know about Edith," I said, desperate to connect. "I found her journal." She took another step closer, her brow furrowing. "You shouldn't have done that. You have to leave, now." Before I could question her further, the door slammed shut again, and darkness filled the room once more. A terrifying realization began to sink in. The whispers weren't gone, they were surrounding me. Then I heard one more thing, a soft, yet unmistakable voice whispering, "Join us." In that instant I understood. The dolls weren't just sitting idly, they were waiting for something. Or someone. My heart sank as I turned toward the girl, who stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide. "Where do we go?" I whispered, desperation clawing at my throat. But before she could answer, the lights flickered and the laughter erupted again, ringing through the air like a death knell. The laughter echoed and bounced off the walls, a horrifying symphony that wrapped around me like a noose. My heart hammered in my chest. I couldn't breathe. The girl beside me seemed paralyzed, her eyes darting from the dolls to me, trapped in her own fear. "Why are they laughing?" I asked, my voice barely rising above a whisper. "What do they want?" She didn't answer but took a cautious step backward, glancing nervously at the door. "We have to get out of here," she finally said, her voice shaky but urgent. "Before they decide they want us to." A sudden clattering sound erupted behind us, knocking my attention away from the door. One of the dolls had tipped over, its glassy eyes now staring directly at me, as if alive. "It's not just the dolls. They can hear everything," the girl said, trembling. "Who are they?" I pressed, desperation clawing at me. A part of me wanted to believe this was all just a nightmare. But everything felt too real. She took a deep breath, composing herself. "They're the ones Edith wrote about. The ones who don't want to be forgotten." She glanced back at the dolls, whose eyes seemed to flicker with a malevolent light. Before I could process her words, a loud bang jolted the air. The door behind her flew open again, and the bright light from the hallway revealed a tall, dark figure standing at the threshold. My stomach dropped, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Come on!" the girl shouted, grabbing my wrist and tugging me toward the door. I stumbled after her, my mind racing as we rushed past the shadowy figure. As we burst into the hall, I turned my head to catch a glimpse of the entity watching us. It was no longer just a silhouette. I could see its features now, a gaunt face, hollow eyes, and a smile that stretched too wide for comfort. My breath hitched, and I stumbled as fear gripped my chest. "Keep moving!" the girl cried, dragging me further down the hallway. I was still trying to process what I had just seen when I felt a cold chill sweep over me. The whispers grew louder again, swirling like a cyclone in my mind. "How do we get out?" I gasped, panic setting in. The hall seemed to stretch, as if the building itself was shifting to prevent our escape. "Just keep running," she urged. "We have to find the way out before they catch us." We sprinted past darkened doorways, our footsteps echoing in the silence. Just when I thought we reached the end, an old, worn door caught my eye. It had a rusty handle, almost beckoning to me. I felt an odd connection, as if it promised some kind of refuge. That way! I shouted, tugging at her arm. But she hesitated, glancing back toward the shadows. Please, we can't, she pleaded, panic flaring in her eyes. They'll follow us. Trust me, I insisted, darting toward the door. I twisted the handle and threw it open without looking back. What I found inside was unexpected. The room was bright, filled with the scent of pine and something sweet like candy. Toys littered the floor, and a single chair sat in the middle. What is this? I muttered, inching inside. That's when I saw it, a familiar doll, standing perfectly still on a shelf, its gaze fixed on me. My heart plummeted as recognition struck. It wasn't just any doll. It was the one from Edith's journal, the one that everyone whispered about. Don't touch it, the girl yelled, grabbing my arm. But it was too late. My fingers reached out involuntarily. That was when the laughter returned, louder than ever, wrapping around me, suffocating me. I froze, realizing I'd de-triggered something dark and menacing. Join us, the voice whispered again, and I understood with sudden clarity. I was no longer just an observer. I was part of their story now. The laughter faded, but the air thickened like fog. I felt trapped, like a fly caught in a web, and all I could see was that doll, its expression unchanging, as if waiting for something. What have I done? I breathed, turning to the girl, whose face was pale, almost ghost-like. We have to go, she insisted, pulling me away from the shelf. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the doll was tethered to me somehow, as if something had shifted in that moment. Before I could respond, the door slammed shut, cutting off our escape route. The figure from the hallway was back, its presence looming in the doorway, casting a dark shadow over us. My blood ran cold. No, don't! I cried out, my voice cracking in fear. Stay close, the girl urged, backing away from the figure, but I felt rooted to the spot. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, even as my instincts screamed for me to run. The doll seemed to glow faintly, emanating a warmth that sparked curiosity despite the fear. Why does it feel like it's alive? I murmured, tension coiling in my gut. They make you see things, she whispered urgently, her eyes darting between me and the figure. It's a trap. Suddenly, the figure took a step forward. I could see the contours of its face more clearly now. Its hollow eyes were pools of darkness, devoid of life but full of menace. You shouldn't have come here, it breathed, its voice like gravel, empty yet resonant. I could feel its words wrapping around me like chains, threatening to pull me under. Run! The girl's shout snapped me from my trance. I turned to her, but she was already darting toward a window at the far end of the room, and I followed without thinking, every nerve and muscle urging me into motion. As we reached the window, I realized it was locked tight. The laughter crescendoed again, surrounding us like a swarm, blocking out all other sounds. What do we do? I gasped, wrestling with the lock while glancing over my shoulder, terrified the figure was right behind us. Break it! She yelled, panic clear in her voice. I took a step back for momentum and slammed my shoulder against the glass. It didn't give, just rattled in its frame. I could feel the dark presence closing in. Then I noticed the doll again, its paint glistening unnaturally in the subdued light. It seemed to beckon me, inviting me to come closer. The doll, I stuttered, a thought blooming amidst the chaos. What if it can help us? No! She shouted, grabbing my arm, but my feet moved of their own accord. I crossed the room, drawn to it. What are you doing? Maybe it knows a way out, I replied, desperation fueling my actions. I reached for the doll. As my fingers brushed its porcelain surface, time froze. The laughter stopped. Everything went silent. Then, in a blink, the room shifted again, colors swirling and blurring together. I gasped, feeling a sensation of being pulled through a tunnel of light. But suddenly, I felt something sharp pierce through my hand where I touched the doll. I yanked back in pain, and in that instant I understood. It's a trap! I cried, fear washing over me again, but I was already losing my grip on reality. The laughter returned, but now it sounded different, more like a triumphant roar. "You've joined us!" It echoed, as if the room itself was alive, consuming me whole. I turned back desperately, but the girl was lost in the shadows, swallowed by the chaos. "Help!" I screamed, feeling the world unraveling around me. Then everything went dark. I blinked into the darkness, trying to remember where I was. My heart raced in my chest. I could feel the pulse in my ears. Gradually, light seeped through, and I found myself lying on the floor of a different room, cold and hard underneath me. I pushed myself up, disoriented, scanning my surroundings. The walls were lined with shelves, but instead of dolls, they were filled with strange trinkets, bent keys, broken mirrors, and rusted clocks. In the center of the room stood a large, heavy table. My breath hitched when I spotted the doll at the edge of the table, its painted eyes gleaming at me in the dim light. I felt that familiar tug, but this time, I resisted. "Where am I?" I whispered, unsure if anyone would hear me. My voice echoed, creating an eerie sense of loneliness. There was no answer, just an unsettling quiet. I stood up cautiously and brushed dust from my clothes. The room felt alive, each corner vibrating with energy. I turned, hoping to find a way out, when a door creaked open at the far wall. Anxiety shot through me. A figure appeared, shrouded in shadow. "You shouldn't have touched it," it said, gravelly and haunting. My heart sank. It was the figure from before. "You're part of it now." "No!" I stepped back instinctively, but the figure continued to move toward me, its features hidden in darkness. "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "It will always want you," it replied, voice low and enticing. "The doll calls to those who listen." Suddenly, I remembered the girl. "What did you do to her?" I shouted, panic taking over. "Where is she?" There was a flicker of movement, and the figure raised its hand, pointing towards the table. My eyes followed where it indicated. There, beneath an old torn cloth, I saw a small object, something that looked like a bracelet. My breath caught. "Is that?" I started. "Her price?" The figure nodded, its voice dripping with satisfaction. I felt dread wash over me. "You took her?" I asked, weakness creeping into my words. I wanted to turn and flee, but my feet felt glued to the floor. "How do I get her back?" "You must give in. Join us fully, and she might be freed," it said, its hollow eyes glinting with a sinister light. "The doll will lead you to her." For a moment, I felt the weight of the decision falling heavily on my shoulders. The laughter echoed faintly in the background, a chilling reminder of what had happened before. "I want tea!" I screamed back, defiance flaring up within me. The figure's demeanor shifted, its smile widening unnaturally, revealing teeth that looked too sharp, too jagged. "This isn't your choice anymore. The doll has already claimed you." Suddenly, the trinkets around me began to tremble, rattling against one another, as if they had come alive. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, and just as I turned to run, I felt something cold touch my wrist. I glanced down to see the bracelet. It was glowing faintly, beckoning me like the doll had before. "No, not again!" I cried out, trying to yank it off, but it only tightened. With horror, I realized I was being drawn back to the table, to the doll that still watched me, its gaze unyielding. Just as I reached it, the room twisted again, colors swirling like a whirlpool. In that moment, the voice from the darkness whispered right in my ear, chilling me to the bone. "Welcome home." Then, reality fractured once more, and I was hurled into shadow yet again. I landed hard on a wooden floor, gasping. The room was dim, barely lit by flickering candles stuck in various holders. A rough stone wall surrounded me, and the air felt damp with an odd, metallic scent. I pushed myself up, trying to shake off the confusion, when I heard the whispers. They swirled around me, indistinct but persistent, like a chorus of lost voices. "No, please," I muttered, heart pounding. I glanced around, desperately searching for any sign of an exit. The space was cluttered with old furniture covered in sheets that looked as if they hadn't been touched for years. My eyes were drawn to the doll again, perched on a rickety shelf. Its expression seemed even more alive, taunting me. I couldn't comprehend what it meant to be claimed. I needed to think of a way out. The girl's memory clung to my thoughts like a shadow. I remembered her laughter, carefree and bright, and the sudden chill that broke through her joy. "Are you here too?" I called out, hoping she could somehow hear me. The room held its breath in response. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved. I turned sharply. It was there again, a flicker in the shadows. My blood ran cold. The figure, I could just make out its shape, twisted and unnerving, hovering just outside the candlelight. "What do you want from me?" I stammered, horrified by its stillness. "There are gifts to be found," it whispered, the words like a slithering serpent. "You need only accept your place." "No! I want to be part of this!" I shouted, feeling the fear surge through me. With the rush of adrenaline, I spotted a doorway at the far end of the room, half hidden behind an old wardrobe. My heart raced again. If I could just get to it before I could move, a chill swept through the air. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I felt a hand, cold and clammy, grip my shoulder. I froze. "You are here now, and the doll awaits," the figure said, the tone almost teasing. I whipped around, pushing it away. But it was lighter than air, slipping through my grasp like smoke. "Stop it!" I yelled, backing toward the wardrobe door. No matter how I fought, a sense of inevitability pressed down on me. I could still hear that haunting laugh, echoing in the air around me. A sudden crash from somewhere beyond the door made me jump. Someone was in the house. It sent another wave of panic through me. "Is this all a game to you?" I shouted, my voice shaking. "I will give you a choice," the figure said, a grin spreading across its face. "Join us or watch her fade away." My thoughts raced. I couldn't let that happen. I had to find a way to save her. I had to act fast. With a burst of courage, I sprinted for the door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it. I pressed against it, trying to force my way through. Just then, I felt a warm light illuminating behind me. My breath caught. That doll was glowing. I turned to see the doll's eyes shining with an intensity one couldn't ignore. "What now?" I asked, voice trembling. Suddenly, the whispers transformed into a singular roar, pushing against my mind. As I closed my eyes, I started to sink into that light, numbing fear replaced with erratic hope. But then I felt an icy grip wrap around my heart. "Make your choice," the figure called, chilling me to the bone. "Time is running out." I opened my eyes to find the room shifting again, and dread seeped back in. The air seemed thick with uncertainty as I gasped for breath, caught between two worlds. I stood there, caught in the limbo of decision as the whispers echoed ever louder, morphing into a crescendo that vibrated through me. In that moment, I understood this wasn't just a game, nor was it merely an unexplainable horror. It was a choice, one with consequences that stretched beyond my grasp. "Join us or let her fade away," the figure repeated, its voice a spine-chilling whisper woven into the fabric of my fear. The glowing doll continued to sway, invitingly perhaps, or maybe in warning. My instincts screamed to stay away, yet I felt tethered to it, drawn by an inexplicable yearning. I glanced back at the door I had run from. What lay beyond it? Was it real, or just another trick to keep me ensnared? "Please," I said, voice trembling as I faced the figure with renewed determination. "Let her go. I'll do whatever you want. Just let her go." The shadow shifted, intrigued. "What a noble sentiment," it hissed, stepping closer. "But what can you give in exchange for her life?" I took a deep breath, grounding myself. I had to think. "I'll accept the doll's whispers. I'll listen to what it has to say. Just let her go." I felt like a child bargaining for a toy, but desperation fueled my words, and a palpable tension hung in the air, a deal resting on a knife's edge. "That is but a first step," the figure replied, its grin slinking across its face as if I'd revealed my unfinished hand in this dark game. I heard the unmistakable echo of running footsteps outside the room. A vibrant energy flared inside me. "You need to let me choose," I clarified, Not just accept what those whispers offer, but to take hold of it all, to turn it against you. The figure froze, its smile faltering momentarily. Such boldness, I like it. Without warning, I felt an icy wind rush past me. The whisper spiraled into a whirlwind, circling around as if I had summoned every lingering haunting into one forceful entity. The light from the doll pulsed, illuminating the room in a brilliant glow. Suddenly, a loud crash came from behind the door I had been drawn to earlier, shaking the walls. It pushed back against the oppressive atmosphere, lifting the darkness for a split second, enveloping me in hope. "Go!" I shouted, where the faintest hint of clarity pierced through. "I will hold them off." The childish laughter echoed, blending with my fear. I didn't want to fight, but as I faced the figure, anger and fear melded into resolve. I lunged toward the door, yanking it open just as the figure reached out a cold hand, trying to keep me in this twisted snare. But the instant I stepped through, the darkness warped and twisted around me. I fell, tumbling through shadows and blinding light until I landed hard on cool grass. I blinked, the sudden brightness overwhelming me. I scrambled to my feet, gasping, heart racing as I scanned my surroundings. I was outside, seeing the familiar outline of my house in the distance, the cold air refreshing against my flushed skin. But then I felt it, a weight pressing on me, that malevolent energy hovering just beyond reach. I glanced back toward the garden, the area where my neighbor's house had stood, but it was empty now, as if it had never existed. There was no laughter, no whispers, it felt eerily quiet. Taking a breath, I turned away from the empty expanse, assuming my heart had won the battle. But beneath that relief lingered an unsettling ache. Had I truly escaped? Or had I only cast the shadow of it behind me? Later that night, as I lay in bed and my eyelids grew heavy, I couldn't shake the memory of the girl or the words whispered to me through the twisting shadows. I glanced at my phone, the light illuminating the dark corners of my room, reminding me that outside the mundane, something unspeakable waited. Weeks passed, and life returned almost into a familiar rhythm. I started to strengthen my defenses, finding solace in the mundane. But every evening as darkness crept in, a part of me tensed, anticipating whispers in the silence. I wondered if I had truly silenced them or if they were merely waiting, biding their time. That winter, on a particularly still night, I stepped outside, a chill running down my spine. I felt as if someone or something was watching me. It lingered across the yard, a phantom reminder pulsing at the edge of my awareness. I never called the police and told no one about my strange experiences, afraid they'd think I had lost my grip on reality. I never looked back at where my neighbor's house used to be, even when the memories lingered like dust in the air, shrouded in unresolved questions and whispers I was certain would return someday. In the end, peace remained just out of reach, a darkness lingering on the horizon, ready to return whenever I let my guard down. I moved away the next spring, seeking that fresh start I once believed would wipe the slate clean. I still think about those shadows sometimes and wonder if they still wait for me, echoing in the depths of night. But more than anything, I find beauty in the silence that greets me every evening, even while I'm haunted by what the whispers might say if I dared to listen.